The young boy walked up to his mother's grave, tears streaming down his face. "Mom, please wake up," he pleaded. "I need you to help me at school. My teacher is being cruel and I don't know what to do." The boy begged his deceased mother for guidance, but received no response. His cries went unanswered, and as the reason for the teacher's behavior was revealed, the educator felt remorse for their actions. Frustrated by the constant notes sent home by the teacher, the boy's mother, in a fit of anger and hopelessness, physically threatened the child, warning him that he would be expelled if he didn't arrive at school the next day well-groomed and accompanied by his mother. David Cito was feeling down as his classmates constantly bullied him, calling him dirty and laughing at his worn-out shoes. The young boy, only 7 years old, was subjected to various forms of humiliation. He desperately tried to clean his clothes, but with no soap or detergent at home and limited access to water, he had to wait for his neighbors to go to sleep so he could fill up buckets from the garden faucets. David's mother, Aurora, was left alone at just 16 years old and was forced to set out on foot towards the city in search of a better life. She fell to the ground, exhausted and unconscious, but was soon found by a kind-hearted woman who took her to a hospital in the city. The woman was moved by Aurora's story and offered her a job at her home, as well as financing for a small house on the outskirts of the city. Danielle Leonor, a kind-hearted woman, felt empathy for Aurora, as she too had experienced poverty and struggled to rise to her current social status. Once Aurora began working for her, Danielle knew she had made the right decision as Aurora was diligent and prepared delicious coastal cuisine. Only Danielle, her husband, and her son Andres, who was studying abroad, lived in the house. With Andres away, things seemed to be going well, and Aurora was responsibly maintaining the small house that Danielle had sold to her. Each month, Aurora gave half of her salary to Danielle and saved the rest, as she was provided with a roof over her head and food, leaving her with minimal expenses. However, 2 years after Aurora's arrival, Andres returned and was taken aback by Aurora's beauty. Though he was not genuinely interested in her, he only wanted her for his own pleasure, as he was too arrogant to consider a humble girl seriously. Andres, who was already in a committed relationship, began to treat Aurora kindly. He would sneak out to the garden every evening to spend time with her, despite her being younger than him. Aurora was swept off her feet and felt like she was living in a dream, and Andres kept insisting on being closer to her, which she eventually agreed to. A few months later, Aurora found out she was pregnant. When she told Danielle Leonor, her employer and Andres' mother, she offered to support Aurora, but made it clear that her son would not be leaving his current relationship for her. That night, Andres entered Aurora's room and demanded that she leave with him and sell the house she had bought with her earnings. Fearing for her safety, Aurora sold the house to her neighbors and left for another town. Despite her difficult situation, Aurora found a way to support herself and her unborn child, setting up a small traveling food business and doing well. Aurora's small house was just enough for her and her child. After a difficult delivery, she brought her newborn, David, home from the hospital, filled with joy that her baby was healthy. David grew quickly and Aurora hired a young girl, Melissa, to help care for him. As David grew older, Aurora began to bring him with her to her food stand, where Melissa would help her with the business. Melissa's boyfriend, who worked at a local bank, came to the stand and suggested that Aurora open a savings account for David's future. Aurora thought it was a great idea and entrusted some money she had saved to him. The following year, when David was 4 years old, he started attending a private school that was a bit expensive, but it was a relief for Aurora, as she wanted him to have the best education possible. Her business was also thriving, and Melissa's boyfriend became its administrator. David's best friend, Juliana, faced a lot of discrimination as her mother believed that the child should not be studying in that school due to his social standing. The owner of the business learned of Aurora's struggles as a single mother working hard to educate her son and decided to give him a scholarship. Aurora began saving more money in the bank, but later fell ill, becoming weak and unable to move. Melissa, who had been helping with the care of David, moved in to take care of her. Despite the doctor's efforts, they could not determine the cause of her illness, and Aurora's abdominal pain worsened. Melissa's boyfriend, who was managing the business, convinced Aurora to sign a power of attorney, giving him authority over her savings. They replaced the workers in the business, and 3 weeks later, Aurora passed away without any clear cause. Melissa told David that his mother was asleep and that they would be leaving her in a place where she could rest forever. The same day, Aurora was buried and David cried a lot, but Melissa and her boyfriend told him not to be sad because she was just sleeping. A week later, David woke up to find that Melissa had left, taking most of the household belongings with her. The only thing she left behind was David's room, and he had to survive on the little food that was left in the refrigerator. With no one to take him to school, he began arriving late, and his teacher scolded him frequently. She noticed that David smelled bad and sent a note to his mother asking her to clean him up. David continued to maintain good grades, but was still distracted. His teacher publicly shamed him in front of the class, accusing him of being dirty and not taking care of his appearance. However, she was unaware that David's water and electricity had been cut off at home as he couldn't afford to pay for them. He would fill a bucket of water from his neighbor's garden and scavenge for food. The teacher sent complaints and memos to Aurora, but never received a response, which only increased her frustration. She would yell at David, calling him by name. The teacher was cruel to David. She would say to him, "Your mother doesn't love you. She doesn't care that you walk around in rags with broken shoes and dirty clothes. That's why she doesn't even respond." Juliana, David's best friend, asked him worriedly about the reason for everything that was happening. But David didn't tell her anything about his situation. Unfortunately, David couldn't present his project at the school fair because he didn't have the money to buy the materials. The teacher criticized him for being untidy and not caring about his work. She said, "This will cost you dearly. I can't have a mediocre and dirty student in my class." She then grabbed him by the ear, took him to the hallway, and threw him a notebook with a note that read, "If you don't show up tomorrow, please don't send your son again. Mothers who can't take care of a child should not bring them into the world." The other children laughed as they watched David lying in the hallway and just watched as he got up and left. David ran to the cemetery in despair and started screaming at his mother's grave. David approached his mother's tomb, tears streaming down his face as he pleaded her to wake up. He begged her to go to school and defend him from the cruel teacher who had humiliated him. Despite his pleas, his mother did not respond, and he was left alone to face the injustice. The teacher, who had grown tired of sending notes to David's mother, had grabbed him by the ear and threatened to throw him out on the street. David's cries caught the attention of the cemetery caretaker, who called the police. The story made it to the news, and the teacher, upon seeing the broadcast, was filled with remorse for her actions. She immediately went to the cemetery to apologize to David and begged for his forgiveness. With the help of the authorities, Melissa and her boyfriend were arrested for stealing Aurora's business and savings and for poisoning her. The teacher, moved by the boy's plight, decided to adopt him and provide him with the love and support he had been missing. Eventually, David's grandmother, Danielle Leoner, saw the news and realized that David was her grandson. She set up a trust fund for his future, ensuring that he would be taken care of. Despite the hardships he faced, David's story had a happy ending. We've reached the end of the video, but before you go, tell us what did you think of the story? If you liked it, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and share this story with your friends and family. Lastly, subscribe to the channel to keep seeing great content like this.